Hello. Today I would like to talk a little bit about the victim role. You probably hear many places or many people talking about the victim, and actually it's not a simple thing. First of all, like I talk about it in most of my videos and most of my courses, how I see the whole world as being a person who's been meditating for a long time, who's been the observer, and who's been looking at this human for a long time. There are three stages in our consciousness. The first stage in our consciousness is the victim role, where we think, and that's the ego consciousness, and that's the shrinked consciousness. And as coaches, we meet a lot of people like this. So the first level of the consciousness is that victim level, and the consciousness is the ego consciousness, it's the shrinked consciousness, where we think it's the first level in our consciousness. And if we are in that ego consciousness, we live a shrinked life. So the possibilities in our lives is small. So the victim role creates a small life. The victim role in the consciousness, which means I see life as I see life as life is happening to me. Things are happening to me. Like this accident happened to me. They did to me. She did this to me, you know? And I couldn't get this, like life is happening. The first level, I see it, it's happening to me. Like all of the arrows are towards me, and of course that's an illusion, that's the shrinked consciousness, that's the ego consciousness, and that's the victim role. Where I don't take responsibility in most areas, and I don't know that I'm not taking responsibility. I think I'm taking responsibility, but actually in the big picture, because everything happening is because of some universal order, and there's, on the third level of consciousness, there's no one to blame, and there's no mistake happening ever in time. Everything is happening the way it's happening because everything is a teaching. And especially in the shrinked ego consciousness, you need teachers, you need teachings. That's why if we are in that consciousness, life is a little tough, life is a little harsh. So what's happening when we are in the ego consciousness, when we're in that victim role, is that life gets hard, life gets tough, and in life we think mistakes are happening, we think there is a lack, we think something is going wrong, and in that illusionary state, life is a little harsh. And I think it's more important to look at where that victim psychology is coming from, or how does that happen. So in that cycle, in that ego consciousness, level of ego consciousness, the shrinked energy, we need to recognize that there are a lot of emotional charges. And where those emotional charges come from, they come from a life not aligned with our values. So what I'm saying is, each and every individual who doesn't live her or his life aligned with his values builds up emotions. Those emotions are not real, but they build emotions. And those emotions are frustration, anger, furiousness, fear, and all those emotions that when they get triggered, they somehow lead us into losing our easiness. So we become, instead of being easy and easygoing, we become harsh and frustrated and angry. And we need to remember and write this down: nothing in life, nothing ever happening in life in this moment creates any frustration or anger. It can't. Nothing in life leads to frustration and anger. You not living according to your values has created that frustration and anger over the years, and something in life triggers that, and in a normal situation, like I forgot, or I wore the wrong shoes, or I wore the wrong socks, or whatever is happening. Just little things trigger that, and all that anger and frustration comes out as and that energy, that's like energy. And we need to understand that, especially when we're working with clients, if that happens, first of all, it has nothing to do with what's happening in that moment. Frustration and anger and all those heavy emotions that are illusion, they are emotional charges, they are getting triggered, they have nothing to do about what's happening in the moment. You might be saying, something like, you bitch, and that wouldn't even trigger anything if there's a person, there's an individual, in front of you that's, who's living according to their values. Like most of the time, I don't get triggered from anything because I'm a person who's living her life according to her values. I don't have that frustration, and it's impossible for a person to get triggered if that individual is living according to her values. Because there is such a satisfaction, there is such a fulfillment that comes, such a gratefulness that comes from just being aligned with your values. You literally don't care about much, because nothing in the world that's happening right now can affect you, and that's reality. But the ego consciousness, like I said, because that level of consciousness, the Shirnt consciousness, has rights and wrongs and shoulds and shouldn'ts, and should be like this, shouldn't be like this, it has to be like this, it has to be like that, all that right, wrong, good or bad, and all those stuff, because it doesn't allow us to live according to our values. A person who has in her mind shoulds and shouldn'ts and do's and shouldn'ts, and this should be like this, that should be like this, our reasoning and our perceptions about life lead us to not being aligned, not living a life aligned with our values, and that creates a lot of frustration. So as a coach, as a teacher, one of my biggest goals is leading people into living lives according to their values, because I see all the frustration, all the anger, all the energy. It's not happening in the now. It has been building up, and something happens and it gets triggered. It's not my problem, and it's not your problem either. It's the consciousness problem. We need to work on the consciousness. It's not the problem of what's happening. So this was the first level of consciousness, and we meet people from that level of consciousness. I meet people from that level of consciousness in all my courses. So the second level is where we start seeing that everything happening in the moment, how I see it, something is happening, how I see what's happening is mirroring my consciousness. So the second level is realizing that wherever I look at, I see myself. When I see good, it's because I think it's good in my consciousness. When I see bad, it's because I have bad in my consciousness. I see things beyond what's happening. I make meaning of things that's not really happening. So something is happening, I make it mean something else. Another thing is happening, I make it mean something else. And I'm the one who is interpreting everything that's happening, and I'm the one seeing everything as it is. So that's the second level of consciousness. And there we start saying, I'm responsible for everything I see. I'm responsible for everything there is. I am responsible for everything I feel. My anger, my frustration, my sadness, my upsetting, everything is because of me. It's not because of the situation. It's not because there is that happening. It's not because there is this happening. It's because I am the one that's thinking like that. And all of the emotions are my creations. It's the second level. We realize all of the emotions are my creations. They are illusions. I created them. All my frustration, all my sadness, life, there's nothing in life that's upsetting. There's nothing in life that's harsh, hard. Everything is happening for a reason. And I see whatever I want to see. And I'm responsible for my seeing. That's the second level. I am responsible. And then there's the third level. You won't meet many people on the third level, especially on the 21st century. Even teachers who are trying to teach reality or truth or whatever couldn't get there. So the third level is kind of like the hidden secrets of the consciousness level, and yet we can lead you there. In the third level, where we are in our consciousness, is seeing the perfect order, seeing the perfection of it all, and knowing everything is happening for a reason and it's perfect. There's nothing to judge, nothing to say, nothing is missing, there's no mistake, no mistakes are happening, everything is happening the way it should happen. Whatever is happening, like for example, somebody walks into the room, they fell down, or by mistake, I slapped them in the face. It's not a mistake. It's happening the way it is happening. So the third level is where we are connected with, let me say, God consciousness or the universal consciousness or the main truth. And there we start seeing the perfect order of everything, and it's beautiful. Whatever is happening, everything that's happening from the third level, everything that's happening is a teaching for the consciousness that doesn't see the perfection of it all. I'm going to say it again because I think it's very important. So, on every level, life is a teaching for the consciousness that does not yet see the perfection of it all, see the universal order of things. The consciousness that can't get beyond the why, because there is a consciousness, the shrinked consciousness that asks why is that happening? You know, why is this happening to me? The question is, why is this happening to me? This is happening to me, the first level. This is a mistake happening. The second level, whatever I see there as a mistake or happening to me is my perception of it. The third level, whatever is happening is just perfect. And I'm grateful that that's happening, because every time it's showing me how perfect it is. And everything is perfect with the universal order, everything. And so the shrinked consciousness thinks, and majority of the people are in that consciousness, as you know, thinks what's happening right now in the world is not fair. So the ego consciousness thinks some things that are not fair can happen, but actually in truth, everything is fair. Each and every individual is living exactly what they need to live. Each and every individual is experiencing exactly what is there for them to experience, because of the consciousness level, because of the situation, everything. Everything is happening with perfect order. So there is not even a moment when something unfair was happening to anyone. Everything is fair, but there is a level of consciousness that can't see the universal perfect order and sees things like unfair. There wasn't any unfairness anyway. Everything was happening perfectly all the time. And that's the third level, and I'm here to support you to get to that level with all my teaching and methods and everything I do. I'm dedicated to expanding your consciousness and getting you there. Thank you for listening again.